All right, I'm gonna try to, I'm gonna go to the question first. Then I'll go back to the beginning. And I thought there was a better way to do it than all this clicking. Almost there. Back one. All right. So what's that? Well, I should have, yeah. But I'm going to read the questions, then I'll go back and we'll do the presentation. Can we predict what will happen when we prescribe a lens that seems to be helpful in the exam chair? Starting the tracking, okay. Are the lenses which bring about immediate observable improvement in performance in the office the right ones to prescribe? And what should follow-up look like? And what expectations should we have for these patients? You're going to see what I hope to do is give you a number of hand-picked, and I'm glad Wendy's back in the room because she'll be featured early in a positive way, a very positive way. A number of situations where I think we've encountered these types of things. Okay, we see somebody do something from a podium or a thing, and what about this over here or that over here, and what about the okay, and gee, this did this thing. Well, does that always mean that's what you should do? That's the main question. Okay, you got the questions? All right, instead of going back, I'm going to unshare, go back to the beginning, and then restart the whole thing. Okay, so boom, and I know, and now move this all the way back to the beginning. Slideshow from the beginning. With the really bad, you get another chance to awfulize it. Let's do the share to here. And now I need to get this screen back on. Okay, so can we predict the future based on in-office clinical observations? Yeah. Are we any good at it? So controversies in prescribing. To me, it's my presentation, so this is my opinion. There's a lot of stuff out there that people present as almost being magical or mystical. And I think that's crap. Okay. I've spent most of my career and will continue as long as I can still live, think, breathe, and share, trying to demystify and get at how the thing actually works. We went through microprisms, and many of you know how I love that term, not. Are they little teeny tiny prisms and you can't even see, you need a microscope? Okay, the 8th diopter, okay. So many things with yoked prisms, postural prisms, prisms prescribed by computer measurement, and I'll talk about NeuroLens for a moment. Fixation disparity compensation. For some of the older farts here like myself, we went through periods where the POLA test comes out, and in Germany for several years, close to 70 to 80% of all ophthalmic lenses that were ground had prism in it based on the POLA test. I thought it was interesting. Denmark said, no way, keep your damn POLA. And right next door, Denmark had like less than 0.5% of their, and this is coming from the labs. But Norway said, we know this. And they went up to something like 30% of all prescriptions for a period of time with these little teeny tiny prisms in them. Okay, so what I don't know is, like, when I say fixation disparity, does that trigger, some of these massive world different, prescribing rates and what happens? And then what they saw happen over time as a result of that. Pieces of tape on lenses. In Peter's presentation, there was a video of Debbie Zielinski and do this and do this, and we saw these videos, okay? And they look magical, okay? Minus lenses OU for convergence, undercompensation of myopia, the O'Leary stuff. Tints. If I hear FL41 one more time for this condition, I will start. Okay, please. Many of you have heard me here. It's not a particular color for a condition. A person needs something that's suited for them. Okay, and we just need to stop. Oh, first thing, TBI, FL41, FL41. All right. Okay, why do we do this? Okay, well, that's part of what I want to get to. So, Wendy, here's the homage to a beautiful presentation you did many years ago. I'm sure you remember it, but it was about toe walking. Okay, now I thought I'd throw it in here, an AI overview, right? So this is not my writing. This recently came from, I asked the AI. I didn't ask her, but I asked one of them. Okay. And it says, and I won't read it in a robotic voice, but toe walking is the act of walking on the balls or tips of the feet and is common in toddlers, though many outgrow it by age 2. It can be a habit, or it may result from underlying issues like a tight, I can see Caroline, she's not, I don't actually see you ready to scream, but these things just, they make me want to scream. A tight Achilles tendon, certain neurological conditions or sensory processing differences. Treatment for persistent cases includes physical therapy, stretching, bracing, stereo casting, or in several cases, surgery. Severe. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And, I remember Jerry Myers, him speaking about his daughter here at the meeting and what they went through and how there was no way his child was going to end up with a strabismus, and went through, a lot of that kind of thing. So toe walking, an example. And again, this continues, this is still from the AI. Idiopathic shortened Achilles tendon, CP, muscular dystrophy, autism spectrum disorder, sensory processing issues, and the treatment options we have available to us are PT bracing, serial casting, Botox injections, and surgery. Now, going back to 2009, I went back and I surveyed the doc list, okay? There are 135 separate threads that were on the doc list that dealt with toe walking. I just searched on toe walking on the doc list, the developmental optometric community. The italics are direct quotes from those emails, okay? Yoke prisms, the #1 optometric intervention asked about. Will the prisms have a lasting result or just temporary for the toe walking? That was in April of 2010. Some interesting collateral negative was noticed, though I thought this was a very interesting opinion. I have a 3-year-old autistic boy who is very clumsy and a toe walker. I gave him 2-diopter base down, they were yoke prisms, which immediately improved heel to toe walking. He happily wears the glasses and has obvious motor coordination improvement when they're on. Mom has also noticed that his attention span has reduced from 10 to 15 minutes on a task like a craft down to 1 minute at best. Anyone else notice a change in attention with your prisms, either a decrease or an increase? So I thought this was just interesting to share, that we at least had a colleague who shared that although it improved heel to toe walking, there were consequences. Okay? Side effects. Another one, an initial post. I put 2 base down each eye on a 6-year-old. She went down on her heels. That spelling error is not my typing. That was direct copy. I should have put sick in there. Straight away. Mother is not really plussed, as her grandmother and great grandmother are both still toe walkers. Mm-hmm. One suggestion came in that thread. I would add plus 062 to the base down and see if that improves her stride length and eye movements compared to just the base down alone. Walking on toes often is just a symptom of an overall visual dysfunction, vision dysfunction, plus often provides a more efficient organization quickly. And another, in the same thread, I would not prescribe this for regular wear. In my experience, they adapt quickly and go back to toe walking. It is useful as a habit breaker, which is then combined with active visual motor therapy. Okay, so this is getting at a little bit of the question I'm asking is, just because you see this physical improvement, does that mean you should prescribe it? Okay. In my humble opinion, the best approach was put forward at this meeting many years ago by Dr. Wendy Garson, and I'm really glad that you were here. And I hope I'm now going to represent your recommendation appropriately. She suggested having 2 pairs of yoke prisms, one with the base up and the other with base down, and to alternate their wear. And I took that, Wendy, mostly what I've been doing is 2 days with one and 2 days with the other. And she's nodding her head yes. And I honestly have found this to be most helpful and to go for a relatively short period of time. And to me, the main therapeutic question was, do I get any change with the lens? If not, I didn't go down this route. But if I got an observable change, regardless of whether one made it better or one made it worse, in this instance, I went with the alternating pairs. Okay? And I just take it, Wendy, that I've represented it appropriately? Okay. Okay. And I should have stopped. I've just gone forward. She explained their use as one pair shifting the person into extension and the other into flexion. And by shifting one to the other, that sets the stage for the person to reorganize their walking pattern to a more, and here's a Greggy term, canonical one, which is the heel strike and toe push off. Okay. I might have put words in your mouth with the last explanation. Does that echo? Yes, I'm getting a yes. Okay. All right. So an approach to toe walking. And I never put that on the doc list in any of those 135 threads. Maybe I should have. Now, yoke prisms, the return to the Kaplan-Kraskin base wars. Sorry, I just down, 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 down. No, okay, fine. I think we remember Mel Kaplan. And again, I think I'm doing his method and justice as I go through. He diagnosed things by looking at characteristics like ball catching, making eye contact, the ball catching, did they catch it too close to themselves, too far away, or at an appropriate distance when he was just tossing the ball back and forth. He did a bunch with the base in, base outs, and the equilibrium findings and this kind of thing. But I think these were the most significant findings he did. There was a paper that he did looking at did these lenses change making eye contact, particularly in the population that were not making eye contact well. And in general, Kaplan gave the prisms that improved performance. He tended to give a small amount. They were worn for years. And the prism amount often crept up over and over. I think I may have it in one of the slides. We had him at the Somerville meeting, and he presented on this. And I remember somebody, I don't remember if it was your dad or your dad, asking, how much are you wearing? When did you start? How has it changed? And basically we got that he was giving himself more and more and more every couple of years. And he was up to a pretty significant amount of yoked prism in the vertical direction himself. Kraskin basically diagnosed, I loved in his book, Lens Power in Action, the right and left phoreas. It's beyond the scope of today to describe that. He observed posture. He looked for differences in performances on various tests, particularly stereo, with the opposing sets of prisms. Mel was primarily, by the way, base up and base down. Bob would entertain right, left, and up and down. Treatment was, he was giving the prism that caused generally a decrement in performance, gave a larger amount than Kaplan, and they were worn for relatively short periods of time. And once the performance equalized on the different pairs and the probes that you work with, then the prism was removed. Many of you remember I played with the spaceport. I know Yves Bastien has gone a little further with it, and there were many variations. Those have been the basis of several papers here. Not going into it, I thought some of the descriptions earlier in the meeting of what prisms were doing and Steve's presentation, demonstration with what Greg was talking about. There are different relative shifts and compressions, expansions, curvatures. It's not a, I remember when I was asked to write the book chapter for Harvey and Suter, and they said, we want a table that says this prism does this, and this prism does this, very much like Greg put in the, and I said, well, if you want that table in this chapter, you'll need to find a different author. Because I don't think that way. It doesn't work that way. There is no simplistic way to describe what these prisms do, okay? You have to take a lot into account. So, but we also saw other debates that went on. Do you remember this? Oh, well, we use this yoke prism lateral with people with field cuts, right? Because oh, it was a field expander, it was a this, it was a that. And there seemed to be a fallacy in the understanding of this, that wherever I look, I'm actually looking straight at whatever I'm looking at. Therefore, there can't really be some of these kinds of things like we saw in these. And there were people fighting fights. Well, if the field cut's here, it should be base right. Oh, if the field cut's here, it should be base left. Okay. I see your face. It's a pain. Yes, it's, if you really read all the stuff, and I think early on and I've now gone in this presentation beyond the Kaplan-Kraskin base wars. But initially people were like, those two Ks disagree, even in the base direction I should prescribe. Maybe I shouldn't go down this path. And Bob always said, you know, if you think low plus is powerful, he didn't say it that way, but okay. So I think we're aware of this. And then, and this was from my chapter, there were spotting prisms and Pelly prisms. Any of you met Ellie Pelly? Anybody? He's a piece of work. He's a really interesting man. When I first met him, it was the period of the Google Glass, right? Okay, and we won't repeat what people called people who wore Google Glass, but he was a very interesting. And I went up to him and I was like, really? Your mother named you Ellie? Last name Pelly? Okay, fine. And she did. But the debate about, you have Gottlieb prism on the right on there, and you have the, and that's not Ray. What's the other Gottlieb? Daniel Gottlieb from Georgia. And a very different philosophy than the Pelly prism. And you see the picture of how I'm doing the Pelly prism there. That was in my book chapter. That was in one article done by Ellie. And then Chadwick does it in a very different way and changes the orientation. I see you talking. Are you talking to me on the screen or no? Okay, something else. I should not react. Okay, fine. I actually found, by the way, just as a quick aside, I tried both of these types of approaches, and I actually found the Pelly prism to be far more effective in helping patients with these field problems, and they were always field problems to the right side, not to the left side. I always found these much more helpful than the Gottlieb prisms, just as a quick aside. But some of the dialogue, oh, they're not spotting prisms. It's like what happens in ARC. It shifts the world over. The person's not aware over time, and they build this integrated view of reality. I thought it was interesting. Okay. And then don't get me started on midline shift. Okay. This is another term that makes absolutely no sense. Okay. And I've had direct with Bill, and he will admit it in one-on-one stuff and then goes right back to talking about this, what I believe is a house of cards. It's a shift in egocentric locus, not midline. Okay. And we could work that out at some point. But these types of things as well, if you found a particular prism that made things right, is that what you should be prescribing? And we saw a lot of these videos. I don't need to play this visual midline shift. And we've seen these videos of walking down these halls and back, and it's like, what, nobody's got an open space? We always have to throw somebody in this tiny little narrow tunnel, right? They're interesting And I think there's a world of really interesting stuff there. Um, Many of the observers become so good at seeing what they see, and they expect on a first showing that we will pick up on all of that. And it's very, very difficult, I think, to share some of those things. I can just give a wink and a nod very quickly at Caroline because she's been doing similar stuff with the reflex and floor work that she does. And it's been difficult at times, although I'm finally, my thick head, cement head, if you will, is starting to get some of the observations. But we've had to video record, go back over them again and again, put your attention here. This is what, and it reminded me of teaching students how to see what's going on in a retinoscope reflex. Okay. And as much as we all like a live demonstration, sometimes a video recording that you can go back and do it again and again and again until people get the aha, then see it, then transfer it over into other, I think is really critical and important. Okay, we don't need to watch the video. To me, Kraskin was the only one who clearly presented what the follow-up sequence should be, and that the desired end result was the complete removal of the prisms. Okay? The rest seemed to be content to show us the magic and then leave us hanging in terms of what the follow-up was. All right. What about compensatory prism? I'll just use that word. How many of you have tried or been analyzed with the NeuroLens thing? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you sat down, you went through the thing, it found you abnormal, and it made a suggestion for a lens. Yes, in every instance, you were abnormal. Don't just, were you found abnormal, Samantha? She pleads the fifth. Mark, that's what I meant. You were found AB normal. Okay. Okay, fine. Me too. From AI, neurolenses are prescription eyeglasses that correct eye misalignment using a contoured prism, which is a special type of lens that helps the eyes work together more effectively. They are designed to alleviate symptoms of digital eye strain and other visual discomforts such as headaches, eye fatigue, neck pain, and dry eyes. To get neurolenses, an eye doctor performs a specialized measurement to determine a custom prescription, as these lenses are not a one-size-fits-all solution. Yeah, and they go on correcting and contour, relief strain. This is the AI searching the thing. So here's my own numbers from two different sites. Actually, it turned out just 2 days apart. One of them said I was a convergence excess. One of them had, okay, and you see my ACA ratio, 6.27, 5.44 on one. It's got all the measurements and what it was suggesting. We know things about both fixation disparity, associated phorias. I used to teach this, and it's like, there's your POLA test, some of the different targets on the left, the Wesson card. And by the way, you can get your Wesson card from Burnell. This is the newest version without the two holes punched in it, because nobody really uses phoropters or near point rods anymore. So they took the two holes. At any rate, in my book chapter on describing using these tests, in particular, I like the Wesson. I've used every one of them at different times. What I was talking about, and I know they can't see it online. I think this is going to track with me. No, it will if I give it the Spock sign. Now it should track with me. Yeah, okay. So the basic idea here was you have alignment, somebody has a stroke, maybe needs something a little different. And one of the things I was talking about, there's different sort of pathways down out of this situation. This would be getting worse. And if you just prescribe the absolute full amount, you don't really know. There could be some slippage over time. It could go this way as well. But these are possible futures. And I think this is the future we would like to see. Again, that decrease in the dependence on the lens over time. And right at this point, and I did it here, you could say the measurements 1 and 2 would be just on that side of exact compensation, okay? And these 3 and 4 might be inside and down here. I just turned it sideways to show too that different people might have different degrees of sensitivities here, that in some people, there's just an incredibly narrow band of what we can prescribe, not just in PRISM, but in just about anything. And in some people, it's a wider kind of thing. And I do think it's interesting that so many of our measurements, people take a single measurement at a certain point. The phoria, we had a thing here, what's aphoria? And we could and have spent days, hours, whatever, in discussion of what's aphoria, right? I don't know that we take enough different types of measures or whether we even need all those measures. So many of you know that I did this. It was done for the CCVC meeting, the binocular continuum, in discussion and dialogue with Rob, because the word that I had over here, he kept saying, can't happen, not possible. Arr, arr. And I went, you're right. Give me a better one. Stop tearing it down. So we finally, over breakfast, relatively recently said, I'll use asymmetry over here, not single-sided, okay? Or that the person is using their binocular system in an asymmetric way. But the whole idea of the binocular continuum was that during the day, a person may use themselves or show themselves to be in lots of different places depending on where they are, how tired, their nutrition, are they overloaded, not loaded, unloaded, whatever. That at times they might be showing in binocular interference or interaction. They might momentarily go up into synergy during an accident, a fall, or maybe they're a top-level athlete and making that catch or that hit away of the ball or that type of thing. And that all of us probably occupy every one of these at some point during our day. And I always thought it would be wonderful to have a binocular continuometer that you could attach to a person and get a readout over the last day or week. How much of the time are they spending in any of these different types of things? It's not possible, but it would be wonderful. And this is directly out of the book chapter I wrote for Harvey and Suter, is my decision tree. What do you do if somebody comes in and they're presenting with a double vision complaint or a binocular vision complaint? Okay. And the top loop, by the way, is always trying to solve a person's problem with the simplest lens. Okay. What about tints? I'm just trying to put a bunch of, only 3 or 4 more slides, then we come to the question, okay? What about tints? What's so damn special about FL41? And the answer should be nothing. Please stop just reflexively giving FL41s, okay? Some of us, before it was FL41s, remember blue blockers. How many of you remember blue blockers, right? And I think somebody even did a paper here years and years ago about blue blockers, right? Oh, it improved my acuity. Why? It a narrow band, right? And they're less blur circle, less. Okay. Think of the red and green test that some people might still use, right? And you're just separating where that is along the accommodation plane. Well, if you collapse that, there's a whole lot less that could be clear or blurry simultaneously. Okay. So blue blockers, what did they find with blue blockers? It was reported here. Oh, yeah. After about 2 hours of wearing them, it defeated the mechanism of accommodation. Defeated. Why? You need the color dispersion. You need the color aberration. That's most likely the signal that the accommodative mechanism uses for its autofocus system to work. Just to keep that in. All right. We had the discussion too about what about wavefront technology? Should we collapse all that? And you get that in Harmon's writings, that these things that people take as aberrations that they try to fix actually are how the system and providing the system with what it learned or developed in order to function appropriately. Okay. Then there was the cerium colorimeter and all of its different things. Um, and I would commend to your use. We did some programming. I didn't do the programming, but this was put up there. We copied and mimicked this. It's still up there. It works. And people are now making lenses based on this on a custom basis for your patients. It's the therapeutic color indicator. That's the exact website, therapeuticColorIndicator.com. Okay. If you use it in a pitch black room on an iPad, and I'm not trying to sell, I don't have Apple stock. The reason for the iPad is I know that the color setups on it, the calibrations are done very well. I will not run this on my laptop. Okay, because I don't know that the screen has been properly calibrated. Looks okay to me, but I will do this on my iPad knowing that the color systems on those seem to be far more reliably calibrated. Okay, there's a how-to on there, there's a video help, and you could get the proper RGB values or the different types of tints to do for your patients. So I hope I've given you enough ground from which you might now be able to answer, can we predict what will happen when we prescribe a lens that seems to be helpful? And maybe it should just be in our office, because sometimes we do these with walking and movement and hitting Marsden balls or hitting lit objects or targets or interacting with things. And yes, movement is critical in that. And are the lenses which bring about immediate observable improvement in performance in the office, are they the right ones to prescribe? And what should your follow-up look like? Again, I think one of the beautiful things about Bob in Lens Power in Action, he talked about what the follow-up should be. And most others just seem to leave it at, I did this thing and we saw this thing happen. Isn't that neat? Okay. And from my perspective as trying to teach some of this, very little instruction on the step-by-step of how to, of the how-to of the thing. Okay. Hibbity hibbity. That's all, folks.